Mr Shoebridge.
Koalas have a special place in the national psyche. They're the animals we brag about to overseas visitors. They feature on our T-shirts and tea towels, and we read books about them to our kids. However, the sad reality is that koala population in the east of Australia is in freefall. The decline in New South Wales and Queensland has been so dramatic, the number of koalas has fallen by 42% over the last 10 years, that the federal government has listed the species as vulnerable. When it did so, the story made international headlines. How could a country that makes so much marketing mileage out of its adorable furry marsupial mascots endanger their existence by the willful destruction of their habitat? Given the sensitivity surrounding the issue of declining koala numbers, you might therefore expect that the Forestry Corporation of New South Wales would conduct lobbying operations in areas where koalas are known to be present, with particular attention to compliance with Integrated Forestry Operations Approvals, the IFOA licence conditions. But an audit by the North East Alliance, NEFA, that details a very substantial list of IFOA licence breaches by the Forestry Corporation in areas of Royal Camp State Forest, just south of Casino up north, a stronghold of those beleaguered East Coast koalas, therefore comes as a disappointment to those concerned with the welfare of the koala. The August 2012 NEFA audit lists flagrant breaches, including the failure to detect evidence of koala activity, the failure to protect known koala high-use areas during logging operations, and the failure to retain important feed and habitat trees for koalas and gliders. All breaches were meticulously documented with an independent expert evidence, GPS coordinates and photographic evidence. It has taken the Environment Protection Authority over a year to produce any kind of response to the NEFA audit. And when it finally came, the response from EPA was so inadequate that it calls into question both the expertise within the EPA and their willingness to regulate the activities of the Forestry Corporation. Despite the evidence, only 3 penalty notices have been issued by Forestry Corporation for logging koala habitat in Royal Camp State Forest, each worth the grand sum of $300. Even more galling is the fact that there's no requirement for the Forestry Corporation to undertake remedial work or to protect compensatory habitat. It's bulldozed and lost. For retaining only 2 hollow-bearing trees and 3 recruitment trees, instead of the required 42 hollow-bearing trees and 42 recruitment trees, the Forestry Corporation received nothing more significant than a warning. And in 3 deeply worrying instances, the EPA officers sent to investigate claimed they had not been able to find the sites in question despite being given GPS coordinates. In an effort to determine myself the nature and extent of the breaches in question and to evaluate the adequacies of the response from the EPA, I visited Royal Camp State Forest, that's 16 kilometres southwest of Casino. I did it on the 21st of August in the company of Dalen Pugh from NEFA, David Millage, a well-respected ecologist, and my parliamentary colleague Jan Barron. Within 5 minutes, we came upon a stand of half a dozen high-use koala trees. They all bore the distinctive scratches made by the claws of koalas, and under each of them we found a collection of koala scats or droppings. The remarkable thing was that the trees we'd found within 5 minutes had all been missed by both the EPA and the forestry inspectors, whose job it is to find and protect koala habitat. But the failure by the Forestry Corporation to identify koala high-use areas was not the only serious breach of licence conditions identified. A swag of other failures were identified by NEFA and were detailed in their audit of Royal Camp. One obvious one was that the loggers had spared a tree from logging as a recruitment tree, but had left a pile of woody debris at the base. Recruitment trees are meant to be large and healthy trees that are left standing so that they can replace older hollow-bearing habitat trees when those older trees die. And leaving a pile of woody debris is a serious threat to the recruitment tree because it acts as a funeral pyre for the tree during a bushfire or a burn-off. Common sense. NEFA not only photographed the tree for their audit of the logging operations, they also gave GPS coordinates for it. Despite this, the EPA told NEFA in their August 2013 report they couldn't find the tree and therefore failed to prove the breach. So I asked NEFA for the report, a GPS, and I was dropped off at the logging dump to see what I could find. Within 5 minutes of walking, following the arrow on the GPS, I came across the recruitment tree. Just like the photograph in the report I was holding, the tree was surrounded by debris and had a big pink R spray painted on it. I took a short video of the area and walked back to the logging dump, shaking my head at the willful blindness of the EPA officers. The Royal Camp koalas and the destruction of their habitat at the hands of Forestry Corporation is particularly well documented, but it's far from an isolated incident. The Forestry Corporation has been caught logging koala habitat in state forests repeatedly over the last decade, but they've never received anything more significant than a slap on the wrist from the EPA. There's no doubt that the Forestry Corporation has been responsible for the destruction of koalas and their habitat. The only question remaining is whether the sheer number and frequency of breaches of logging conditions suggests these actions are a result of willful ignorance, incompetence or something more akin to malice. When koala numbers are plummeting, we need a better result from our environmental regulator.